Good morning, good afternoon, good night to whoever's listening. Doesn't matter wherever you are around the world because you are here listening to the Jump Up Supercast Game Club.
Yay!
Welcome back. My name is Brandon. I am your host. I am the most handsome man in all of the podcast business, and you wouldn't know because you can't see my face, but it's okay. Joining me today, I have fellow Jump Up Supercast members. I got Noah, he's not the most handsome, but he is definitely the most beautiful.
Yay.
For sure. Without a doubt. I also have Saf. He's the most suave.
Why, thank you.
And I have, bringing us up from the behind, Will. I don't have anything to say nice about you.
It's fair.
He's got our butts. It's alright.
I gave him the most praise last time. At the beginning.
It's fair.
So.
Gotta balance it out.
It's only fair. Yeah, exactly. Well, this week, if you've been following us, we played Alundra for the PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting game, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. Let me just go over a little bit about Alundra first. Alundra was released on the PlayStation 1 back in 1997 or 1998 if you're in Europe, and it was known as The Adventures of Alundra, actually in Europe. But Alundra everywhere else. Developed by Matrix Software and published by a couple different people, Sony in Japan, Working Designs in North America, and Psygnosis, those owl people, in Europe.
Psygnosis was a weird company. Like, I kept seeing their logo everywhere in PlayStation games.
Oh, for sure, yeah. They did a lot. I think they did, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they did, like, Wipeout back in the day. Maybe I'm wrong. But who knows? Who really cares? Because we're here to talk about Alundra. Alundra is it's an action adventure role playing game.
Top down perspective.
Top down, definitely inspired by Zelda, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like you could see a lot of similarities between that and Zelda, but I feel like it has a lot of its own thing to differentiate from Zelda. Definitely,
it has its own identity outside of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
it definitely doesn't follow the same formula.
Right. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's definitely inspired by Zelda. You can take a look at it, and anybody will take a look at it and say, this looks like Zelda. And, I mean, there's definitely a worse place to draw inspiration from, that's for sure. And because they drew inspiration from Zelda, the game turned out to be pretty damn good.
And at the time, obviously, Zelda was going down the Ocarina of Time path, so I think that there was a space for, like, the top-down, more in the style of Link to the Past style of game that Alundra fills in. In
that console generation, for sure. And speaking of that console generation, that's, a generation known for its 3D games, or first taking a step into 3D, like Ocarina of Time. But this game, used 2D sprites, and honestly holds up very, very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of, like, sprite work, yeah.
That's a continual thing with a lot of PS1 games, is that, like, obviously, at the time, the big draw was 3D, but, like, games like this, and, like, Final Fantasy Tactics and other sprite-based games,
Symphony of the Night.
Really, they age a lot better, and, like, I think this game still is pretty. I think it still looks nice.
Like, some of the animation, the sprites animations, like, with Lars and, like, so, like, all the mages / guardians.
Yeah.
Their sprite work, like, was really cool. It was, like, really impressive, cool effects.
Yeah, the effects, that they went above and beyond with those effects. Like, they made it feel like this is something that could be done on a PlayStation 1 game, despite the fact that they're using sprite work that you would expect on a SNES or some shit like that.
It just looks real good, even in today's standards. So, I mean, it holds up well. Unlike a lot of 3D games of the time, you look back at a lot of N64, PS1 games, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of sprite art. Like, sprite art has its own level of artistic value, and it is recognized to be something that you can use and get away with. Like, even in modern games, you see that same level of detail in regards to sprite work. And
you're still seeing it today with a lot of indie games.
Yeah, for sure.
Using sprite work. So basically the story of this game, you're playing as the title character, Alundra, and he's an elf who's from, this clan of elves known as the Dreamwalkers. And so he's setting out to this land. I think it was called Inoa.
Inoa, yeah.
Inoa, yeah. And he was setting out there because he kept having a dream where he was fighting a mysterious figure, and he wanted to figure it out. So at the beginning of the game, you're on a ship heading towards this place, and the ship crashes. You wash up on shore, and he's just trying to figure out what's going on here. And he comes to find out that all the people in the town are having a problem, a Freddy Krueger type problem, where they're getting attacked in their dreams, and some of them are dying. They're getting murdered in their dreams, and they're in turn dying in real life. And so he finds out early on in the game that he can enter people's dreams and fight those nightmares, which is pretty cool. That's a cool, it's a really cool concept, story. Yeah.
It
and drives the story.
It's neat because it intersects the gameplay of like these dungeons. Though the dreams are the smaller dungeons of the game most of the time, it intersects what's happening with these characters and their stories with the dungeon design itself, which is neat.
And later on, when you progress through the game, the dungeons become much larger than they are in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so in the overworld, there's dungeons kind of like Zelda-like. You have a big overworld to go explore, and of course, just kind of like Zelda, you get items that help you traverse or unlock different parts of the map that you can get to later on to either get to the next part of the game or to go backtrack and find extra stuff, extra items, extra health pieces that help you on. So it's all of that just adds up to it's a pretty fun time for the most part.
I want to circle back a little bit, if I may, to the dream thing and the fact that the people die in the dreams, they die in real life. I was surprised how much canonical death there is in this game.
Yeah.
Oh, you barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, I know, but even just characters will die, right? It's not like Alundra's constantly like, I saved you from your dream, you're welcome. Like sometimes you're not there in time and people are dead and they stay dead.
Yeah, or you come out of their dreams and they turn into a monster and you have to kill that person. And you kill that person. They actually die. And and it's cool because after every, big story, piece, the entire town folk, they react to it.
Yeah.
And it changes the town, how they look towards each other, how they talk to you. It gets to a point where they're even like, are you really here saving people? What are you doing? People are still dying. They start to not trust you even.
Yeah,
and it's super cool.
Yeah, I know. You kind of side with them, or you kind of are sympathetic towards them because as a dream worker, you're not really that good at that job.
Yeah.
And it's neat because it ties into the overarching story of if we can get to that a little bit, the god trying to get people to worship him, right, to get more power, and sowing dissent and sowing distrust among the villagers and among and their feelings towards you. It makes sense why they might be turning to weird, non-trustworthy sources because they're having to deal with the fact that their village is slowly just getting decimated.
Yeah. Can I make I'm going to make a criticism about the dreams themselves. Because you mentioned that there's two types of dungeons. There's one on the overworld and there's one in the people's dreams. The one thing that I kind of felt as though was a missed opportunity was the fact that the people's dreams, they didn't feel as representative of the characters themselves.
Yeah.
They could have just pushed more for something that matches their personality a little bit with the environment. So you have this dude Bonaire, who's a fucking radical surfer dude, and the dream that you're in doesn't actually reflect that, or is not some twisted version of that at the very least. Which is kind of I felt as though it was a missed opportunity for this game. Especially when you're trying to present these characters and these villagers.
While the dungeon itself isn't representative of the character, you still get the end boss and the creature that came after him kind of fits with his personality. Bonaire was after this chick, and the boss of that dungeon turned out to be a succubi/demon kind of thing, a seductress.
Which is cool, yeah.
And further, in one of the later dreams that you enter, there are these twins, and the dungeon itself is actually based around the twins. It's like a mirror image of itself. in a way, and you have to interact through one dream to have an effect on the other dream, and vice versa. So they actually did that. What you pointing at, like you pointed out that they didn't do it with all the dungeons, but they did do it with some, and that was really cool.
I mean, like, I think it should be noted while we're talking about it. There's a lot of dungeons in this game.
Yeah, about 23 dungeons to be exact.
Yeah. And like all of them, I mean, I don't know if all of them are, but like a fair number of them are longer than even like equivalent Zelda dungeons, right? Like the first dungeon is as big as like a mid-game Zelda dungeon in a lot of ways.
But also, what adds to it, what makes it feel like it's longer is like, it's actually, like a lot of the puzzles in this game in general are really either difficult to, once you figure out how to complete it, to actually do it. Like, some of the puzzles are platforming based, and sometimes you struggle a bit. But then other times, it actually leaves you stumped. Like, this is a very difficult game.
It is. That's like both a compliment and a negative thing I have to say about this game at the same time. Like, the puzzles are very difficult, and when you figure them out, you're like, oh man, I feel real smart. But some of them I feel like are just difficult for the sake of being difficult. Like, they made them more difficult than they needed to be, instead of being clever. And that kind of frustrated me a little bit. But for the most part, while being hard, they are still very good.
Yeah. Like, as a kid, there is no chance I would have beaten this game.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't. Like, I got stuck at the third dungeon when I was a kid.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Noah, we mentioned this when we were talking about the game earlier. Like, you mentioned the fact that the game, a lot of the times, it doesn't, like, stack tons of different concepts on top of each other, but what it does do well is it does, like, make you use mechanics that are already there in ways that you didn't think about originally.
Yeah.
And I think that can both make it obscure in some ways where, like, I didn't even know I could do this, but in other ways, it does make you feel more clever because it's the thing of, oh, I actually did have the tools available to me to solve this puzzle. I just didn't know at first glance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some trouble with, like, some of the puzzles with, I don't remember the name of the dungeon, but it had these blocks and with different astrological shapes. Like, it had the sun, the moon, a star, and a raindrop, I think.
Yeah, that one.
And
that was the desert, I think.
At first, it's fine, and you're just matching up. You're throwing the block on the tile that matches the shape, and that's easy. And you're like, okay. And then you get to a room where there's 4 blocks. You have to throw them on there, but they're rotating. The picture on the tile is rotating between all 4. And you have to time it with the throw. And if you fuck it up, you got to leave the room and come back to reset the puzzle, and which is fine. But it was, the timing was a little tricky. But once you got it, you're like, all right. But then you get to another room where they're doing that again, but this time you have to put the blocks in their north, east, west, and south, and there's a word on the wall like news.
Yeah.
And you have to match it with the letter that it's under with the direction, and also time it at the same time. Like, it could have just been a blank square, and you had to just figure out, oh, north, east, west, south. Okay, I get it. But no, on top of that, you had to do the timing thing again, which was so unnecessary to me. Like, that was one of the situations where it's clever, but they also made it harder than it needed to be.
See, I didn't really mind that. Like, I felt also like that was just like the natural progression of like making the puzzles more challenging and a little more complicated in this dungeon. I didn't mind that at all. The biggest thing that I minded about the dungeons in this game was like, they don't really tell you about your own capabilities or what things you can do. Like, you can do a whole bunch of shit, and some dungeons require you to use certain skills, but you'll never explain those skills that you have. Like, I think it was...
you're just given the item, you don't know what the item is capable of.
Yeah.
That's my biggest gripe in regards to the dungeon.
The game kind of expects you to figure out a lot of stuff. Like, whereas in Zelda, let's say you got an item, but to leave the room that you got the item in, you had to use the item, right? To figure out how to get out of the room. Like,
to show a basic understanding of how this works.
Exactly. And then, like, the next room would have the same thing, but add a little bit onto it to make you, okay, well, it can do this, but it can also do this. But the Alundra just gives it to you, and then you're left to just, okay, well, where can I use this? You don't use it until like 10 minutes later, 4 rooms down. And it's weird. Like, I got the bow and arrow, and you're just like, hey, go figure out where to use it. And it's like, okay. Or you get the ball and chain, and it's like, it doesn't tell you it can break the blocks, right? You have to go figure out. It does if you hover
over the item, but yeah, it doesn't show you in the game, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you, so you gotta figure it out on your own. It's a little bit, it's not cryptic, but it just expects more out of the player, I think.
I do like it though in the overworld. I think that I like the overworld map in general in this game. I think that it's that each area is distinctive enough that it's nice that you can sort of tell. And it does do the thing of like every time that you get the item, you do it in Zelda too, but I would say you do it more so in Alundra. It's closer to Metroid almost, where when you get the new item, your brain goes with like, I need to try that on this place, this place, this place, and this place, right? Like,
yeah.
That's true. I did get that as well. Yeah.
There's new place. There's more gating off with items that, like, mentally you catalog it and you want to go back later and try to find the stuff. The game also has
the world itself was actually really fun to explore. Like, I enjoyed exploring, and I enjoyed like getting these new items and just unlocking different parts of the world with these new items. It was part of fun, and just getting different. That's another thing. Like, some of the items that you get when you're exploring isn't really that rewarding. Like, the most I was hyped for were like gilded falcons when you find in the map, but otherwise it was just mostly just herbs or just
strength tonics, yeah.
You can only carry one strength tonic, and you have one on you, and you already have full health, and you're like, well,
that was a waste of time,
Yeah, but then it's frustrating because then you got to leave the treasure chest closed, and then you'll come back to it later and be like, oh, what was in this again? And you take 2 minutes to try to figure out how to get to it, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck.
Yeah, I feel like.
Well, you could tell, like, if it took you a bit or you struggled to get to a certain point to get a treasure chest, usually you get something good, like a life vessel or something. Like, the easy chest always herbs, there's no doubt. But
like, there are full mini dungeons that are like 10 rooms that just give you essentially what's a heart container, right? A life vessel. And so it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot for, that makes that reward meaningful, and like it teaches you, sort of along the way that like you're gonna have to work for the big permanent upgrades.
So one specific puzzle too, I just want to mention in the game that really was not a good puzzle was you walk into a room, there's 4 holes, and there's a switch. yeah, Saf knows. There's 4 holes and a switch. There's a couple pressure points that you have to stand on, and you have to activate them all at the same time. But you need a barrel, right? You hit the switch, and out of the 4 holes, 1 barrel and 3 spike balls pop up and then go back down. So you got to hit the switch and stand on one of the 4 holes, and hope that it's going to be the barrel, and then get the barrel and put it on one of the pressure switches. You need one of the times you need 3 of them, and you walk in and you have 6 chances too, and each time after you get through 6, it's only spiked balls. So you got to leave the room and come back and reset it. The problem with that is, it's random every single
That's just
time.
Rolling the dice. You just got to get a good dice roll 3 times.
Yeah, and those spike balls do like 2 or 3 damage, which early on in the game, I think you might have like 15 health max.
At that point, yeah.
And it's very frustrating that you get to that point, and it's just, there's no skill, it's just complete luck. With something like that, it's very, very frustrating. Zelda wouldn't have a puzzle like that.
Not that I remember, no.
Or it would be a side game, right? It would be like and there would be a trick to it, That's
it wouldn't
the thing.
be something to progress through the game. That was an example of a really dumb puzzle.
I was gonna ask, because I was thinking about it, because we were looking at Noah. You beat this game in like 27 hours or
27 hours, yeah.
And how long to beat puts it at like 35,
that's average, yeah.
Which is long. Like, that's long for a game of this type.
Pretty long.
Yeah, for a PS1 game, it's extremely big. Like, very long game.
And especially like the format of this game, right? Like, Link to the Past, even if you're doing 100%, like, that game's probably like 20 hours, right? If you like are coming at it from an adult's perspective. But like, do you think that this type of genre just doesn't benefit from having this much size to it? That eventually, if you have it be to this scale, that some of the puzzles will just sort of end up being stinkers along the way.
I don't know, like, they could probably get, like, if Alundra was, like, maybe had half the dungeons, I still think it would be a decent experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just saying, like, cutting, like, 15% of, like, the stuff that you could tell they were just sort of like, this is an idea, but we don't have a lot to do with it, right? Like that whole puzzle. I think that there can sometimes be moments where you're like, all right, I get it. I get what we're doing here. I would like to get to the end of this dungeon, please.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I feel. Yeah,
I had that kind of feeling with like maybe 2 or 3 dungeons, but the majority of them were good. I enjoyed them quite a bit.
Yeah, I want to clarify
No,
that.
I would have totally been happy with just cutting a couple of dungeons, like just to make the game tighter and feel more. Like I guess have them spend more time just refining the dungeons that they already have.
Yeah.
Like
for sure. Some more quality over quantity.
Or
some
quantity,
more quality over quantity for sure.
Now I do like that there are systems that do get added later on though, right? Like the scrolls and the spells and all that other stuff. That like there's neat stuff to this game beyond just like the combat of a Zelda game is never super engaging, right? Like if it's like A Link to the Past or whatever. But I think that like they add enough in this game to make it more RPG like, to where there is attempts to like there's experimentation for like what is good in what area and like where spells can apply, and be more useful. That makes combat more fun.
This game, the boss fights themselves, they actually, like, there are certain spells that work with certain bosses, and there are certain spells that don't work at all with other bosses. And it's the same with the items.
Yeah, there is a boss in the game that can only be damaged by the ice wand.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a giant fire dragon in the volcano.
Yeah, and there is a boss in this game that you can one-hit kill with just the bomb.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Like, they do...
But it's super hard to hit him with the bomb. That's why it makes it challenging.
It's a weird mixed bag, I think, the boss fights. They can go from being way too easy to being like, why the hell is this boss so hard, to somewhere in the middle.
That is true. They did jump around a lot with the difficulty, except at the end. At the end, they just made everything like really tough.
And also with jumping, the perspective sometimes is a little bit like
off.
It's a little off. You just like, what the fuck? Because there'll be parts where there'll be multiple platforms, and it's very hard to tell what level these platforms are at that you need to be jumping across.
Yeah, it's hard. Like the perspective is weird with a top-down view game when it comes to platforming. Right, It's hard.
When I was playing it, I was like, this game would benefit being on the 3DS.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
With being able to see the perspective.
They should have taken
Link Between Worlds didn't have jumping. It didn't bring back the Rock's Feather. I'm still upset about that, by the way.
This game would have benefited from Mario and Luigi RPG. Should have just paid attention to that.
I mean, but I do like that it has jumping. I think that the fact that there is like you start off with what is the equivalent of the Pegasus boots, right? Where you can just dash and you can like do a tackle out of that and you can jump. It makes, like I mentioned before, originally the overworld exploration. I think a lot of the more enjoyable parts of that come from the fact that you have more traversal options. I think the platforming fails when it's like, hey, there's a pit beneath you, right? Or there's like a punishment for time, because it does not benefit from precision, but it allows them to do more varied environments, which I think is the trade-off.
Yes, for sure. Like, when it comes to precision, jumping is not good. It gets really dumb. But for exploration, it's great.
I do like that the translation is weird. It's PS1 weird. It's a thing that doesn't happen anymore in terms of translations, where like you can't tell if it's an English speaker who doesn't quite get Japanese or the other way around. But like sometimes there's like, you're in deep guacamole, my dude, and you're like, what do you mean by that? Like, who's ever said in their life you're in deep guacamole?
That's one of those big good points I love about this game is like all the characters in the game, you can tell what their personality is and what, like, sometimes even their accent just by the text and the words they use.
Yeah, there's a charm to
like
it.
My favorite NPC, Bonaire, is like the surfer dude. Like, he's a clear surfer dude. I love him. He's my favorite. And then you got Jess. It's like kind of like father figure / uncle to you. It's like it's
and he's kind of flamboyant.
Yeah, he's kind of flamboyant.
He lost
and, like,
his wife.
nobody
He's
is
still
like
Gingrieff.
Yeah, you got the overly religious person, and then you got like and then there's nobody is like high elf. I am like a very
stoic,
high standard king like speech kind of guy. You know, like you get in like these fantasy RPGs usually. It's like everybody talks properly and like is very what's the word? I guess proper, respectful, that kind of tone. But everybody has that tone. You know what I mean? Here, everybody has their own way of speaking and their own personality.
It feels like a weird
like
village.
everybody has their nice personalities.
And then, of course, you got the assholes, but they're clear that they're assholes from the start.
Yeah. I'm shocked that in a Japanese action RPG, a religious figure is the bad guy. Seen that one coming.
But has that never happened before? Truly a revolution.
Untrod territory.
Yep.
It is very original.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
And one last thing I want to say, because I beat the game, it was... For a final dungeon, I was expecting it to be like, oh my god, this is going to be so annoying. It's going to be like 1,000,000 times harder than any dungeon I've ever faced. Which was true to some extent, but it also impressed me because it did like bring a little bit of every dungeon that it did in the game. Like it had the platform mechanics, it had like the speed jumping, it had the hidden switch behind a statue you can't see because of the perspective, you had to figure out this riddle, you have to find the key. It had a little bit of everything, and they just piled up to one massive dungeon, and
All
it
the
was
stuff you learned along
just
the way
right.
mattered.
It was like, it didn't take forever for me to beat, and it wasn't extremely hard to figure out either, but it was still difficult to find your way around. You know what I mean?
It rewarded you for paying attention, right?
Yes.
For like internalizing the lessons the game had taught you before.
Yeah, that's
directly
the mark
tied
of
into
a
the
great dungeon, yeah.
It
Like
was a
great
really
final
good dungeon.
for sure.
And on top of that, I personally love the soundtrack. I don't know about everybody, if you guys liked it or not.
It was hit or miss. It was.
I enjoyed it, actually.
It was
I
mostly
liked
generic.
the town music.
I like the town music. Town music was great, but mostly it was generic and kind of meh.
Yeah.
Like, when I played the other dungeons, there were some dungeons that just made me increasingly frustrated because I couldn't figure out what the fuck to do. Like, with this dungeon, I felt I was in the same situation, but the music actually fit in so well with the dungeon that it actually calmed me down and helped me figure out shit.
That's good.
Which is very rare.
I noticed that the music starts off more cheerful, and as you play the game, it does get a little bit darker as
the whole generic theme of the game is extremely dark.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole story,
music
especially.
gets darker
Yeah.
with the story, which I thought was cool, but for the most part, most of it was forgettable. Other than that theme, the town theme music, which.
But anyway, going back to the dungeon, the final dungeon. At the end, the boss fight was challenging, but it did leave you hints on how to beat it. It just didn't blow out like, I'm this overpowered boss, you cannot defeat me, blah, blah, blah. You actually had small, tiny, subtle hints on like his pattern and how to work around his overpowerful attacks. Which as soon as I figured that out, like you immediately get past that point. And then of course it has a second phase, his real form, which is absolutely fucking terrifying. Like, it caught me off guard. Like, you get an image of the boss, of what the main bad guy of the game is, and even at the beginning of the game, you get, like, a vision of him. And then you see his real form when you have the final dungeon, and then when you fight him and beat his first form, he gets his real form, which is something out of Nightmare Fuel.
It's the stuff that nightmares are made of.
Which is, works with the theme of the dreams.
It has a really nice ending, which I enjoyed as well, and it just goes you through... It shows you, like, an anime cutscene, like an actual drawn-out anime cutscene of all the different boss fights that you did.
Oh,
yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, and it switches between, okay, Alundra beat the guy, the place that you fought him and got destroyed, it's sinking into the ocean, blah, blah, blah. And then you go back to, like, he's starting to repair the village and all the destruction that happened. And then it goes to, like, the first boss fight you had. And then, like, one of the nightmare creatures. And then you fought the wolf guy that turned into, like, the villager that turned into a wolf. And then, like, you see the fight of the volcano giant fire dragon that happened. And you turned him into ice. And it was really cool and really satisfying ending.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna move into some of our final things to say here. Let's just go through. I'm gonna go through each of you guys and just ask you, will you play Alundra more or again? And also, would you recommend it to somebody else? So I'm gonna start with Noah, since he is, he suggested this game. So I'm gonna start with him.
All right, so if I would recommend this to people, definitely, if they like exploration dungeon games and puzzle solving, but with the word of caution that it takes a lot of patience to get through this game.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it, and it's very enjoyable, but you need patience, especially for some of the puzzles. And I'm probably not gonna play it again, but I'm definitely gonna try to get and play the sequel. I heard it was bad, but I'm gonna try it for myself.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to Will. Probably played the least out of all of us.
Yeah, I did. But I mean, yes. Like the thing is, the problem was that like suddenly Yakuza 6 fell on my lap in the middle of the week, and I was like, but I really like this game. Like at its core, it's a type of game that I have an affinity for, which is that like sometimes it can be frustrating, but I appreciate the sense of discovery that comes without being overly explained. Just the nature of the world and also the puzzles themselves. So yeah, I'm totally. I would recommend it if you are a person who, because I would feel like out of all the sort of genres that exist, the like top-down adventure game sort of has had recent entries, but it still is lacking from the glory that it once had. And this is definitely a good example of that type of genre that has its own unique ideas for it and is a well-made game. So yeah, I would recommend it if you're at all a fan of this type of genre in game.
Okay. Saf?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Like, I feel as though this game does a lot in regards to the story and the gameplay to make it appealing to average players. Like, there's something that wasn't mentioned in this when we're discussing this, where it's like, if you're having a hard time with this game, or if you're one of those people that would struggle with this game, they do something clever which makes the game easier. Like, there's an unlockable item that is only there for people who aren't that great at this video game, and it's a very, very powerful item to help people. And I feel so that it's one of those kind of things that I appreciate a lot for this game, that allows it to be welcoming to newcomers, while at the same time just it's not something that is there for skilled players. It's like, you don't need this shit, you can just continue playing this game and have fun. Like, so I would definitely recommend it to anyone and just have them play it because it's enjoyable. In terms of playing it again, I would be fine not playing this again. Like, I've had as much fun as I could possibly have with this game for the first playthrough. Even
Maximum fun.
Yeah, maximum funnage. Like, I explored as much as I could. I found all those different secrets. Haven't got a chance to beat it because of my situation, but I would have definitely beaten it, and I would have enjoyed enough to beat it at the very least. But that's about it. Yeah.
Well, as for me, I might still keep playing it. I'm enjoying myself, and I got pretty far in the game. And as you know, with a recommendation, I would recommend it to people for sure. If somebody was looking for a Zelda-esque game, like when it comes to Zelda clones, this is definitely one of the best ones I've ever played, for sure. I think maybe the only Zelda clone I could say that might be better is Okami, but that's more of a 3D Zelda clone than a, if somebody's looking for a top-down Zelda-esque style game that's not Zelda, let's say they beat them all, and they want more, I would definitely say, well, check out Alundra for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
So, I would definitely recommend it to people. Maybe not everyone. I wouldn't recommend it to a 10-year-old, because he probably would not be able to figure it out.
That is fair.
But he would still have fun. He'd get pretty far. It's definitely a good game. And that being said, how good is it? How good is this game?
Where would we put it numerically, for example?
Yes.
On a, say, a
Numerically
list
in,
of video games.
Let's say, yeah, in a list. In fact, the Jump Up Supercast game list,
Oh my gosh.
where would it go in there?
Damn.
And that is the question that I'm going to pose upon you people.
Well, Noah, since you picked it, do you want to start off with where you think it should go?
It's tough to answer, honestly.
Can I just jump in there? Because I already have.
Yeah, go for it.
Below Stardew Valley.
I would put it above 3D Land.
What?
See, that's what I was looking at.
I was actually going to agree with Sap. I was going to say below Stardew Valley.
Well, here we are, folks.
Here we
Tied
go.
vote. Tied vote.
All right.
I
Place your
gotta make
arguments.
some
Why?
cases.
Okay. So, in my mind, Alundra is a game that has clear flaws, right? There are issues with it, but I think that overall it has, at its core, enough unique ideas that are interesting and are well explored enough, not just story-wise with the dreams and with all that stuff, but also mechanically. There's a nice mix of what is like the core of Zelda, like items that you get, then also the RPG elements of upgrading your equipment, your swords, everything else along the way, that combined with just a large amount of content that I have a lot of respect for, it melds a lot of things that I think can be hard to put together in a good way, that I think, while I've had to argue against 3D Land in the past, but while I clearly like 3D Land and respect 3D Land, it does one thing very well, but I prefer the mixing of several different like styles of game that Alundra offers.
Okay, so you said it's quite unique and quite special, because like I would put 3D Land as something very unique, but what makes you think that it's more unique than something like Stardew Valley?
Well, I mean, this is the problem with the list, is that I would put it below Stardew Valley, but above 3D Land. But because of the list, I have to do this.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's why for me, I start at the bottom and work my way up.
Yeah.
And once I hit something that I think is better, that's where I stop, regardless of whether or not I feel like there might be a game above it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's inherently where the problem is.
Yeah. This is what the problem is with this list. This is the immediate situation, because like you have different ideas of what you consider as a better game. Like with 3D Land, I feel as though like it does manage to do something unique, but what it does unique is way better than what Alundra does unique. Like the flaws in Alundra are far more glaring to me than the flaws in 3D Land.
I agree.
I guess I'm of the here. I've thought about it.
Okay.
So the problem with the list right now, let's be honest about it. It's so top heavy. Numbers 1 through 9 are all super good games. Okay.
Yes.
This is the problem. So
I mean, well, we're getting there.
I'm willing to put Alundra at like the top of the B tier, and I think that means that it probably needs to go. I guess I'm willing to give it to you below Stardew, but know that as I say that, Alundra is very good, and Mario 3D Land should be.
To be honest with you, it is a very good game, yeah, for sure.
It is a very good game,
but it's
and
up
it
against
being
tough
this low
competition.
Yeah, it being this low on a 12-game list says nothing to how good this game actually
it sounds worse than it is as a statement, right? The problem is that we've just been picking good games.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alundra will do a good job at staying in the B tier for a long time. It's not like we're gonna be adding games and saying, well, Alundra's shit. It's in the Metroid Other M Sonic 06 category, right?
Yeah, obviously do not consider it that way. I mean, I think Ben Moore of Easy Allies once said that like sometimes you end up liking a 7 more than you end up liking a 9, but you still know it's sort of a 7, you know?
Right.
And I think Alundra is sort of in that spot where like it's objectively probably worse than some of the games that I would put it above personally, but I like it more.
Actually, before we actually make this final agreement, Noah, do you have any arguments that you want to throw to us?
Not really. I mean, we've already talked about all the goods and the bads about it, so...
I mean, I get what Will's saying. Like, that's how I feel about, like, the Tales series, right? Like, the Tales series is, like, one of those series that people are very lukewarm on. But for me, I love it. I think it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But other people are like... But at the same time, I know what these people are talking about when they complain about it. But I still fucking love it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You get where they're coming
I know
from.
that it's no Final Fantasy when it comes to RPG. You know, and they're all very samey, and you know, but I still absolutely love the Tales series regardless. So,
So are we cool with putting Alundra at number 10 on the list?
number 10, still in the top 10.
Still in the
And
top
it's
10.
It's a
Very
very
respectable.
Good game. I think it. As long as we don't keep adding fucking heavy hitters on here.
Yeah, we gotta start looking at some like mid-tier stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Who is the Chavo Guerreros and the William Regals of this list, right? Like, well liked, beloved by hardcores, but you know, never champion.
Yes.
I always preferred
Yes.
Eddie, to be honest with you.
Well,
Eddie was way better.
Eddie's top.
Eddie's top tier. Eddie would be number 4 on the list right now, and we're looking for number 10. But anyways.
Yeah, but anyways, that pretty much brings us to the end here of the game club. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Fun to be here.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun playing another game. And speaking of games, we're gonna keep playing more games because that's what we do here at the Game Club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole purpose of it.
Exactly, that is the purpose of it. And you know, this week, I actually picked a new game for us to play.
Okay.
It was hard. I was on the fence all night last night thinking about it.
Shit, the fence.
On the fence.
Oh man.
And I ended up going with a classic. Where you thought Alundra was old.
Oh.
You think we're a bunch of old men.
Oh no.
We're getting even older now.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
But this is a classic that a lot of people liked, and luckily it won't take 30-40 hours of our lives over this.
Maybe. We'll
It's kind
see.
of on the short side. I actually chose the Simpsons arcade game.
Oh my gosh. So this is the brawl. It's a beat 'em up. It's a brawler, right?
Yes.
You can play each of.
I just want you guys, if you haven't played it, to give it a shot.
Okay.
It was one of my favorite games growing up, and yeah, I always wanted a home console release. Eventually, we finally got one on the Xbox Live, you know,
The 360?
Xbox 360. And so, you know, unfortunately, I think it's been taken down, so you guys are going to have to figure out a way to play it, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Very legal ways to play.
Very legal. You will find a legal way to play it. You can all come to
We're
my
all
house. I have it.
gonna build our own arcade cabinets and play.
Go to the arcade. You know what? They're still out there. I know a place, 15 minutes from my house that still has an arcade cabinet, so you can.
It's
go
possible.
play it. Yeah, go spend some quarters. But it's gonna be fun. We're gonna play the Simpsons arcade game. We're gonna come back 2 weeks time. We're gonna talk about it. Look forward to that. And in the meantime, don't forget to catch up and listen to us on the Jump Up Supercast, the weekly episodes that we do. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on SoundCloud. You can find us on iTunes, other places that you want to listen to us.
Twitch.
And you can find us on Twitch. We stream there. A lot of us stream there very often. Make sure you follow us so you can get some notifications on that. And make sure you follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram to get live updates on all sorts of other stuff that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I just want to say thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
You're welcome.
It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime.
And I will see you guys in 2 more weeks to talk about the Simpsons arcade games.
Yay.
Good night.
All right, have fun. Go play some video games and go kick some ass, everybody. And be nice to each other.
Yeah.
Get in or get out.